Season 3 of Friends is an odd one. It has some of the greatest sitcom episodes ever written, thrown in with some proper half-baked plots. So today we'll dive into it all. We'll explore the Ross and Rachel storyline, the show's tendency to chuck love interest in the bin for no reason, and why I think Ross might secretly be British. This is Friends Season 3, a messy mega hit. Opening episodes can be hard, but it does tend to help when you actually treat episode 1 as a premiere. The end of season 2 is great mostly because of Monica and Richard's beautifully handled breakup. However, with no real cliffhanger to resolve, the show has to just pick a place to start, meaning we get two pretty limp subplots sandwiched between the more interesting story of Monica. You'll notice I say no real cliffhanger. Obviously we get Janice walking in at the end, but we skip past all of this in the premiere. Chandler and her are just back together. This is quite a big contrast to Season 2's opening episode. Not only does it pick up exactly from the end of Season 1, but it sets up the game. Julie has arrived into their lives and Rachel can't cope with it. And this isn't just a one episode premise, this is the base of a storyline that will run for multiple episodes. With Season 3's opener, the Princess Leia fantasy, we barely get any setup for the series. And this is okay, a good sitcom episode can just be a fun romp, but I don't personally find this one very funny either. It's incredibly middle of the road, which is odd for your big welcome back episode. What's even weirder is that the very next outing is one of the best episodes in the entire show. The one where no one's ready isn't just funny, it's a masterclass in both sitcom writing and challenging yourself as a creator. Keeping everything in one room forces the writers to be incredibly specific. There's no room to mess about, every plot, every line needs to hit, and the individual stories between characters need to effortlessly intertwine. There's no relying on a cutaway and musical sting, there's no resetting the tone, effectively turning this episode into a short play. The amount of craft that is piled into these 25 minutes is proof alone why it's still one of the most successful shows of all time. But it also proves why sitcoms are one of the hardest genres to get right, because you need to follow this up, and not every episode can be this experimental showcase of your writers and stars' talents. And this is where Season 3's messiness becomes incredibly apparent. Season 1 and a lot of Season 2 seem to have a distinct charm that is later lost in the show, and it's this season where we begin to see it drift off. The first two seasons are a little slower, the humour and many of the plots are slightly more grounded, other than the dreadful mistakes of that fucking monkey and lookalike Ross, but those two plotlines stand out because they don't fit the overall tone of their seasons. Season 3 is where we begin to drift into more stereotypical sitcom territory, where plots slowly become more outlandish and the humour becomes less grounded. And we see this with plots such as Phoebe dating her sister's Stalker. I've seen a lot of people say this plot is now dated, but I think that's quite kind, because it's always been shit. It's a bad story. The punchline of this plot is Phoebe hiding behind a bin. Yes, it's creepy and a bit tasteless, but I would be much more likely to give that a pass if it was actually funny in the process. Later in the season, we get a really simple story of Phoebe being on hold on the phone for the entire episode, and I think that's 100 times funnier than any of the Stalker stuff. The mundane being exaggerated is this show at its best, when dates go wrong, when leather sticks to your legs, when phone calls never end. That's the secret ingredient to this show that I think sometimes they lose during this season. That being said, there's still some great stuff in this first half. Monica trying to get over Richard is really well written, leading to some great comedic moments as well as a lovely scene between her and Joey. It's simple yet touching. The Thanksgiving episode is really fun. I love an episode that gets the whole gang together in one story. We lose this ensemble later on in the show, they start separating them a lot more, and it's a shame because their chemistry together as a six is just unmatched. Chandler and Janice's breakup is another well-handled plot. Sometimes it's a risk giving more screen time to a character who really should only be a returning cameo, but Maggie Wheeler brings so much charisma to the role that I'm glad we get a few more Janice appearances. They do a really good job at not only fleshing her out, but also making us care about her and Chandler's relationship, and that's not easy when the butt of the joke has previously been, why the hell is he dating her? So there's some great stuff. I just think my biggest issue this series is that it feels more episodic than the last two. The last two, while still being very much a sitcom, managed to thread plotline through multiple episodes a lot more effortlessly than here. And this is why I think the second half of the season is overall a hell of a lot stronger. Love them or hate them, the Ross and Rachel storyline really is the anchor of this show for the first few seasons. I've always wondered if the criticisms of this storyline come from the length of the show itself. 10 seasons is a bloody long time to stretch out a romance between two morally questionable characters. I think audiences probably became tired at some point down the line. However, I do think these early seasons completely nail this storyline. As soon as Mark is introduced into the mix, the season suddenly has a long-running plot thread tying the season together. Ross's jealousy isn't just a throwaway gag, it's character development with consequences. Ross was cheated on in his last relationship, and that anxiety is portrayed brilliantly, even if it is heightened to fit the sitcom genre. The writers aren't worried about making him slightly unlikable or hard to sympathise with, and I think that's brave. I also adore how they root their issues in very relatable stories. Rachel working difficult hours and having to cancel plans feels very grounded and down to earth. Me and my partner have worked weird hours before, and it can be a struggle in a relationship. This show is about 20-somethings stumbling through life, and this story beat captures that perfectly. Once again, it's the mundane heightened, and that's where this show soars. And then of course this season we get the iconic Ross and Rachel breakup. This two-parter is wonderfully crafted, with enough drama to make it feel real without ever sacrificing the jokes. The performances by both Jennifer Aniston and David Schwimmer are magical. Their timing, their chemistry, their commitment both to the humour and the drama is something that I think is taken for granted. I genuinely believe they are both stunning actors. Many people debate whether they were on a break or not, and to me that's proof that the writers nailed it. That's exactly what they were aiming for. They can't make any of the characters the ultimate arsehole. They need that slight ambiguity, and the fact fans still debate this plot years later just shows how brilliantly they captured it. And that argument, the final breakup scene, is beautiful because they just let it play out. There's no forced humour, no jokes thrown in for the sake of it. They know they have two great performers and they just let them play. Keeping the other characters locked in Monica's room is a stroke of genius. You've literally got a drama room and a comedy room, allowing you to cut between the two without breaking the atmosphere that one scene creates. And you'll see a lot of people say that both Ross and Rachel are unlikable, and yeah, I don't think that's a bad thing, nor do I think that's an accident. They make shitty choices. Our first introduction to Rachel is her leaving her fiancé at the altar. That's not exactly the go-to introduction for an incredibly likeable character. Why can't I say introduction? I've filmed that bit like 5, 6, 7 times. Introduction. Introduction. Our first introduction. Ross is a bastard at times. Rachel is spoiled and self-centered. Without these flaws, there'd be no story, let alone 10 years worth of story. I think modern audiences see unlikable traits as a bad thing, and I really hope this attitude changes soon because it's ruining a lot of modern storytelling. There's a difference between purposeful unlikable flaws and irritating unlikable writing. Fans sometimes talk as if these unlikable qualities are there by accident, and I'm sorry, they're not. They're built into the plots and the stories. They know full well that Ross is a bit of an arse. They play on that constantly. But then again, maybe I'm just being kind, because Ross is British. For years, Ross Geller has been my favourite character on Friends, and for years people have shamed me for it. And I'm sorry, in my opinion, he's the best. And recently I've tried to work out why. Why do I love this character so much? And then it hit me. He's British. Not actually, he's obviously an American man. I'm not saying there's a hidden storyline here where he's actually London born and bred, but his character, his comedy, and the horrific things the writers put him through is exactly the same way you would craft a British sitcom. In the UK, we love to be cruel. It gets us out of bed in the morning. Our comedy can be sweet and heartfelt, but there's usually a sprinkle of misery involved just for good measure. A well-respected doctor's life is suddenly turned upside down when his wife leaves him for another woman. That could be the pitch of a British sitcom. Adding that she's pregnant with his son, that his childhood crush is back in town, and every time he tries to tell her he loves her, he's stopped even by exes or manic cats, and you've got it sorted. Ross is an arsehole, and we love a bit of an arsehole. Even the most beloved comedy characters in the UK have that streak of unhinged. Del Boy from Only Fools and Horses is lovable, but he's also a bit of a dick a lot of the time. David Brent, a lovable arsehole. Basil Fawlty, an evil man whose downfall is irresistible to watch. The characters from Gavin and Stacey, they're all selfish and self-centered, rude, crude, and sometimes spiteful.
Take a look in the mirror, you pre-op.
But we love them, and we love to be horrible to them. Big Boys, one of my favourite comedies of the last few years, has the character Danny. He's a lovable lad who has had quite a tough time in life. Is the show kind to him? Is it soppy and lets him deal with his mental health in a kind way? No! He accidentally shits the bed next to his girlfriend and has to try to clean it up without waking her. The Royal Family is a show full of menaces, grumpy, moaning menaces who constantly take what Barbara does for the family for granted. Jim spends most episodes picking his ass and telling his son he's useless. But my God, do I adore him. Because then suddenly the shows will switch. Jim will hold his daughter and cry, Danny will break and your heart will break with him. Del Boy will melt your heart and suddenly you're rooting for him to win. Emotional moments are usually used as a gut punch in most UK comedies, and they do this with Ross in Friends constantly. This man rarely catches a break. His trousers stick to him, he tans himself 10 times, his girlfriend breaks up with him, he says the wrong name at the altar, he whitens his teeth too much, he had a breakdown over a sandwich, he's unhinged and unlikable. And then, a little moment of softness. He'll give Rachel his t-shirt because she loves it, or help her get ready and miss his appointment, and it doesn't feel soppy or twee because they've earned that little moment of softness. And I'm not saying other characters don't have this throughout the show, but it is different. It feels more American in its approach. But Ross, this man, is a British comedy man, and I think that's why I adore him. He's an arsehole, but sometimes lovable, but always unhinged, and for me that's a recipe for the perfect comedy character. Let's explore one that isn't as perfect. That was a dreadful segue. That was awful. I'll try and get better at that. Pete is the first major example of a plot beat that I'm gonna call "and then they killed a man." "Then they killed a man" is a plot beat you get in a lot of writing. When a writer has given themselves a character they no longer wish to use, so then have to have them do something stupidly irrelevant just so they can leave the story. In drama, you may have them kill someone so they can fuck off to prison. In Friends, we get some even weirder choices. Pete is first introduced this season as a very rich bloke who has a very big crush on Monica. At first, Monica has absolutely no interest in Pete, but after he basically wears her down, she falls head over heels for his softer lips. Within a few episodes, the gang think he's going to propose, and Monica isn't 100% against the idea, but it's later revealed he's actually planning on becoming, and I quote, "the ultimate fighting champion." In the next episode, we see that he's dreadful at this. He refuses to quit because apparently he has a death wish, and Monica breaks up with him because she cares too much to see him turn into pulp. Yeah! All of this happens over the course of 7 episodes. They are only actually together for 4, and that's including the episode they get together and break up. And this feels very quick, but it could work. A fast romance that fizzles out is a good story, but it's obvious they didn't quite know what they wanted to do. Because this ultimate fighting plot plays out as stupid as it sounds. It is nothing but a "we're done with you now, let's just get rid of him." It's so random and aimless, but not in a fun, quirky, comedic way, it just plays as weird. It always makes me wonder why they bothered with this character at all. And this may be sounding like a nitpick, but I'm bringing it up now because Friends does this constantly. We are introduced to love interests and then immediately they're thrown away in really stupid or convoluted plots just as we're beginning to connect to them. A much better example of the quick romance this season is actually with Joey and Kate. Their whirlwind relationship is suddenly ended when she decides to leave for another acting job, and yeah, that makes perfect sense. She's an actress who never really actually seemed that invested with him in the first place. And they still make this incredibly funny and it plays out in a ridiculous way, but it's grounded in some sort of normality, meaning I don't get whiplash while watching. Talking of endings, look, I'm sorry, I'm tired when writing the script for this and I don't have the energy for natural segues into new topics. We're talking about the finale and that's enough. The season finale is actually quite good. The gang are together for most of it, which is always nice. Even though we're taking out the show's usual setting, it still works, which is something a lot of comedies can't say. Setting is so important in comedy, and Friends is one of the only shows that gets away with taking the characters out of their established homes and coffee house. The whole strip poker game segment is fun, the flirting between Ross and Rachel is captured really nicely. The main issue with this episode is mainly the corner the writers get themselves into. A lot is set up here that never really gets a satisfying payoff. We'll talk about Phoebe's mum more in the next video, but rewatching this plot back does feel incredibly pointless. It adds nothing moving forward, and it is a shame because the idea, the concept, is quite a good one for developing Phoebe. Also, Ross and Rachel's flirting would probably be better if it was just that, this unsaid attraction. The issue with getting them back together so quickly is it's obviously not going to work. You've just broke them up. But again, that's more a point for the next video. Bonnie is a pretty forgettable character, but I think that's okay. We're not really meant to root for her. And the cliffhanger of what room will Ross go into is nicely handled. It's simple but effective, and I know many people would have tuned in just to see the answer. Overall, I think this finale perfectly captures my feelings on the season. It's good, some of it's great, but overall, slightly messy. Season 3 relies heavily on the Ross and Rachel plot, and yeah, it's brilliant, but it does mean that other characters like Phoebe rarely get a storyline to fully shine. This season feels very much like the show shifting towards its next era. It has an element of the first 2 seasons style, but slowly it's becoming more of the fast-paced style that would be present in later seasons. This is a show that now knows it's successful, and you can kind of feel that. It's slightly less rustic than it used to be, and while that's natural, I must admit that rustic tone of the first 2 seasons is something I miss. All that being said, there are still some standout episodes, with the one where no one's ready being a masterclass in sitcom in general. The characters are all still incredibly strong, and the whole thing is just so effortlessly watchable, and that's why it's still one of the most watched shows even all these years later. Next time we'll be looking at season 4. We'll explore Phoebe's plotline, the Ross and Emily storyline, and of course, Kathy, and why she's the worst example of "and then they killed a man" in the entire show.